Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful back in the studio today with another new video in our gel print art series. I think this might be video number 15. So if you have not been following along, I will put a link down in the description to the entire playlist so you can start from the beginning if you like. We've covered a lot of things up until this point, and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. Before I get started on the tutorial portion, I did want to answer a couple of questions from the last video. So if you're brand new, welcome. I hope that you enjoy this video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. Click on subscribe if you haven't already, and then the little bell will give you a notification when I post a new video. So I have links down in the description for this playlist, for some other videos that I have referred to maybe in some of the previous episodes, and then also a running list of different materials and tools and things that I like to use. So some of them might not make sense to you if you have not watched the previous videos. So today I had a couple of questions in the last video. In the last video, I made some sort of buttons and accessory type things using the gel prints that I have been making throughout the series. And it will make more sense, if you've watched the previous videos. But I did have a couple of things in the last one. One was when I was showing all the little accessory items, I wasn't showing them up close and slow and in detail so that you could see everything. I didn't even think about doing that because at the time, the reason I was showing them at all was kind of, here's what I made and I'm going to show you how I did it so that you can make your own. So it wasn't really about showing the result that I came up with, because yours are going to look different because your artwork is going to look different. So I'm going to show these. I did go ahead and list these into my Etsy shop. These are just buttons. I'm going to try to get some of the other items listed as I have time here, but I made some pendants on necklaces, and then some hair accessories and that kind of thing, some magnets, refrigerator magnets and that kind of thing. So I am going to start listing them. And so I think what I'll do is, for those of you who did care to see them up close and personal, I'm going to show them to you now. And like I said, these are all listed in my Etsy shop. I will have a link down below so that you can find these, but I'll just kind of try to get in here and see if I can focus so that you can see them. So these are the larger buttons. They're all about an eighth of an inch thick, a nice doming on them, and they're shank style. So these would be sewn onto something. And so there's the larger hearts. I have two of those. The larger hearts are about 1.5 inches wide, so maybe a little less the other way, but I'm calling them 1.5 inches. So those are the two larger hearts. And then I have, let's see, of the smaller, 4 sets. I paired them, as I mentioned in the video. I just tried to put 2 together that would look okay together. They're all individual original pieces of art, so they're not reproductions, so there's no 2 alike. They're all hand done. Same, these are about 1/8 of an inch thick and with the shank style, but this way you can kind of see them a little bit better up close. So they're just all the little gel prints with the added pen work that I've been showing in these videos. And then I had 2 of the larger. I did make a trip to Paso Robles, and so I did part with some of these things while I was there. So if you saw more items in the previous video, but I don't have them all anymore. So these are what I'm putting on Etsy. But these are, again, about 1/8 of an inch thick. These are 1.5 inches round. And again, with the shank on the back. I had made some this size that had like a pin, like a brooch pin back. And I'll probably be making more of those too. It's just as time permits. I'm kind of moving on to the next thing at the moment. But I will hopefully be making more of this type of thing and restocking my Etsy shop as I go. So these are, again, 4 pair of the 1-inch size buttons. So I hope you get an idea. You can see the metallic if I tip it, you can kind of see that you get that little glimmer through the metallics. So the round, 1-inch round buttons. And then this was also a 1-inch round button. It's looks a little bit different than the other ones because it was from, these were from, if you've watched the videos, these were from my little collage leftovers that were small, and so the doodling and everything is much smaller scale. These were from the larger scale stripy papers that I made. So it'd be if you took a circle like this and made a button out of it. So it's just the pattern's a little bit more open. So those are in the Etsy shop. Now the other question that I had was about my packaging. And so the packaging, there's a little bit different sizes depending on what. And so as I get things listed on Etsy, you'll see the packaging differ a little bit in shape and size, that kind of thing. So I'll maybe repeat this, as I show you these up close. My packaging, I do make that also. And I have a few different sizes. Like I said, I make handmade paper. And the paper is made from recycled different pages. Could be old book page, white paper of any kind, mixed media paper. Just when I trim things and I have little scraps, watercolor paper, all of that. So they're all a little bit different. And because when you use a book page and the pages, you might have older books that are yellowed and some that are more white, but you have the print on there that's black. So it comes out a really weird gray color. So I tint it. I just mix some random things I have, dyes, and come up with kind of a seafoam color. It coordinates with the jewelry boxes that I have. So all this packaging actually originated a while ago. I've been making jewelry for probably 15 to 20 years, somewhere in there. I've lost track. But over the course of that, my packaging has evolved, and I'm currently using a seafoam colored box to send my jewelry out in. And so I was trying to kind of tint it to that kind of thing. And then this card that's in front is printed onto cardstock, craft cardstock, so it has that color already, but it's the original I just hand did. So this was before I knew how to do any type of digital graphic design at all. I'm self-taught, and so I didn't even know how to, put together this really on the computer. I had to manually draw it and then scan it in. I know you can find little corner designs online, and I did look, but I didn't find anything. I had kind of an idea in my head, and I didn't find anything that looked like that, so I just hand drew it. So I've been doing these for quite a while for my jewelry, like I said, and then I stitched them together on my sewing machine. So that's my cards that I make, and then I just... This is one that I would normally use for earrings, and so it worked out well for buttons also. And then I have larger ones for necklaces that could work for more buttons, a larger set of buttons, or the magnets. I think I showed that in the last video. So different sizes kind of thing. These I don't put in a box. I put these in just a little clear cellophane pouch, and then it gets wrapped in tissue and sent off in a bubble mailer. So that is my packaging for the buttons. Okay, I'm going to get this out of the way, and we're going to get started on today's video, which is in the gel print art series again. And it is something totally different than what we've been doing, but kind of on the same line. You'll see what I mean. Let me get my supplies. Okay, so I started with a little teaser on Instagram. I think I don't know if I put it on Facebook or not, but I don't think I did. I don't even know if I did it on YouTube, but I did it on Instagram. I think I was away for a few days to Studio B, and I do have gel printing supplies there. So I ended up deciding to try to play around and do something like what I've been doing with the paper, using the gel prints to create these other papers that we could use to make items in art and that kind of thing. And so I thought, I want to try doing it on fabric. I've seen other people print onto fabric directly with the gel plate, and I wanted to see what I came up with and then do some things with the gel printed fabric. So I did a little teaser, and I'm just going to kind of show you. You can see I've already torn off one edge of all of these to just start playing around. But these were all made with Liquitex paints. I think some of the metallics, no, they are all Liquitex. Just Liquitex basic acrylic paint is what I use for all of these. Some of them are metallics. And I think in maybe one of them, and it might be this one. I don't know. I may have even used the iridescent medium. I get this question often about why do your paints shimmer? And these are because I've used metallics. I like to use metallics. But the other thing that you can do is you can take any paint that you have, any acrylic paint, and you can, this is from Royal and Langnickel. I get it at Walmart, but you can order it online. I believe there's a link that will be down in the description if it's not already there for this. But I use this a lot. You can mix it with any acrylic paint and it will give your paint an iridescent finish. I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of sparkle in that. And it's just kind of a clear thing that you add. So it doesn't really change the color except to give it the shimmer that you want. It's kind of like when I've used way back, if you watched me doing junk journals and things, I loved using the sheer shimmer spray. It gives it the same kind of effect, but on, paper or fabric or anything. So these are from my stencils that I made. I have videos, and I think there's a link down in the description already for my stencil making videos. I had 2 series that I did on making your own stencils, and I use a Cricut maker to cut mine, but any kind of cutting machine. Now that comes to another question that I had recently. I've had it multiple times, and I do want to figure out how to do this, but I've had people ask if I would sell my stencils on my Etsy shop, or if I would be willing to sell the SVG files, the files that you would use to cut them at home on your own, like instead of doing digital prints, kind of thing with the digitals. It'd be a similar thing where it's a file and that's the pattern you use for whatever cutting machine you have to cut your own stencils. So I'm looking into that, to doing that. So I don't know how soon. I'm going to try to do it soon to make those available. But these are the ones that I just did playing around. These were all done on cotton, 100% cotton fabric, and I left the fabric there and had to buy more. And when I came home here, I have some 100% cotton that I can compare, but I also had purchased some, you can buy these little packages at Walmart also, and these are poly cotton, and they're more poly than cotton. They're 65% poly and 35% cotton. They're a little thinner than the 100% cotton that I also purchased, but I wanted to do a test today and see if I like this because I need to use it up. I'm going to be showing you another technique later in the next video where you have to use 100% cotton. So I want this one, I'm hoping it doesn't matter, and then I could use some of this up. So this is just the poly cotton. So it's pretty thin, but I think any kind of, white fabric that you want to use, an old sheet would work, muslin, any kind of, fabric. I think you could probably even do this technique on thicker fabric. So we're going to do it on this today because this is what I've cut. So I have gone ahead and cut a few pieces. I'm using 9x12 because I'm going to use my larger plate today, because some of the things I want to do, it doesn't matter my stencil size. The other ones that I did using stencils, I use an 8x10 plate because I designed my stencils to work on an 8x10 plate. So that's why. If you mix them up on your design, it doesn't matter. But if you want a whole design from just one stencil, then to me it's a waste of fabric if I use the bigger plate and I'm only using a smaller stencil. But again, that I like to trim off my white edges and use all those too. And we're going to kind of do that today. So you can use, if you want more white edges to have to play with, then you can, adjust the size of the gel plate you use to the size of your fabric. So that's kind of up to you. Okay, so I need my gel plate. This one is from Jelly Arts. There are different brands. This one's 9x12, and I'm going to just pull this one out here. And if you've never used a gel plate before and this is your first time, a lot of people, you either have played with it or it's just some new foreign thing to you that is just really kind of, everybody that I've showed that is not into this, they're like, what the heck is that? So it's kind of a plate made out of a gelatin material. There are recipes for this. I've not made them myself, but you can make them at home and make them that way in different sizes and things. But one thing I did not know is how to store this. I didn't read the instructions, or it didn't have the instructions in the brand I bought. I don't know. But I threw away the clamshell that it came in, the plastic clamshell. And you want to save that because you want to store it in there. I haven't tried this, but I think it's probably really smart. It comes with these two plastic sheets for top and bottom to store it. And that's how I store mine. But you can see I need to clean this one. It's really grungy because I don't really clean my plate every time because I like grungy things. I like the leftover bits and things that'll come off in a later pull. The thing is, you can kind of, I don't know if you can see, but you see how when you put this on, there's like little bubbles and things? Sometimes those, if it's stored a long time like that, those transfer onto your plate and then it's kind of a permanent little mark. So I heard the tip for that, and I just haven't tried it, is to actually store these with a piece of paper, just printer paper on top and bottom. And then you don't get that little kind of plastic on plasticky kind of transfer thing. So I haven't tried that, but it sounds like it makes sense to me. I guess my fear is that over time that paper will just be stuck to this, but I don't know. It kind of makes sense. So I might try that next time. So I like to do it on a surface where it'll kind of stick to it. So this mat, it does that. If you have a glass mat, that works really well too. Something that you can clean up. If you're working on your table or something like that, depending what your table's made out of, you might want to cover it in plastic or something. And also I find that a lighter background is also better because you're going to see your colors a little better than if it was a dark background. Okay, so gel plate, and then, sorry about the glare, I do have overhead lighting that's kind of shining on there. And then I'm just going to grab some paint. And actually, before I do that, you're going to also need a brayer to roll on your paint. And I'm going to use this larger one, I think, because this is a larger plate. And then I have a smaller one that I try to keep two going, a cool color and a warm color one. But you can, if you just have one, that works too. I also like to use, if you have another plate, this is the one that I threw away the packaging, and I just happened, this is from some markers, and so it happened to fit my 5x7, and I have this little extra piece of plastic because I don't want these little indentation marks to transfer to my plate, so I kind of protect it. Not perfect, but it works. So I work with a second plate kind of as a palette, honestly. You'll see I have some bad tendencies, and one of them is to use too much paint. So I like to have a second one going so that if I have too much, I can put it over here. This ends up getting really grungy. I also like to use it if I'm going to mix colors. Sometimes I don't mind mixing directly on the plate, but sometimes I want them mixed before they come to the plate. And when I work with stencils, you'll see why. I like to have that second plate there to mix my paint and then transfer it. So this ends up getting printed also, and I do use these for collage, but it's just kind of an extra place to work. So I'm going to use another brayer also. Then the other thing that I like to have, and I need to grab, you might want some baby wipes to clean. You might want to wear gloves. I don't usually. I might today. I'm tired of trashing my hands. But the other thing is just some book page or something that if you want to clean off your brayer and not on this, you can. Or if you get too much paint. I like to use these because then they're book page, and even if I just get a little paint on them, I throw these into my collage bin too. And you know, if I don't want to waste paint, so if I have too much, I might use it for even mark making on book page. So keep something clean off. It might be something like even just copy paper or scrap paper. The other thing that I like to use normally when I'm printing on paper, I have a couple different kind of papers that I like. When I'm using stencils and I need to clean out in between, what I like to use is a thinner paper like a deli paper or a tissue paper. So I need to grab some of that. So these you can buy, they're super cheap. I think I ordered this one online, and this is just bakery tissue, so it's smaller sheets. So I can put some of those here. And then I also have some sandwich wrap. I just get this at Smart and Final, but this is 9x12, so it works great on the 9x12 plate. And you can see I have a couple of other things shoved in here. This is scrap tissue from 12x12 sheets from my craft plastic that I use to cut my mats. And then I keep, when I have something that doesn't really turn out, or I want to put more on it to make it more interesting, I keep a pile of this because I'll just add to it until I get it to a point where I think it'll be good collage fodder. So I can even just leave some of these here for myself. And this is how your table gets super crowded before you've even started. Okay, and then some stencils maybe. I'm only gonna do maybe one stencil because I don't have very much fabric cut here and I already have a lot of stenciled ones. I wanna do something a little bit different today on top of that I haven't tried before. So I'm gonna grab maybe one or two stencils so I can show you my method for getting those, the techniques that of the finished ones I showed you. I have a favorite way of doing that. So I want to share that with you. Okay, I wanted to grab some that I had not used. So I grabbed one of this is one I have not used, and you can see it's smaller than my plate. One of the things I do when I make my stencils is I like to actually shrink them down and maybe put multiple on so these are maybe ones that I already have in larger, and then I just create some smaller ones of the same design so I can kind of make them patchwork, and then the scale of them is smaller. So I might use some of those too. Okay, so the first thing is for this, I'm going to have some edge around, which I don't mind because I'm going to cut these up anyway. But I like to think about, I'm going to do 3 colors, and I'm going to try to think about what color you're working backwards. And so if I show you an example, this one kind of shows it. This one actually has, this is where you mix it on the plate and you see I have blobs. It's because I didn't mix it to the side. But I like this technique of having this outlined edge of your stencil and then how it has that pitted old metal look on the stencil, and then you have your other colors in between. So I like doing that technique, and that's what I wanted to show you. I've shown this before probably, but that's what I want to show you today. So I like to do that with either maybe a dark color or a metallic or something. And so let's see what I'm going to make up today to do. I'm kind of thinking I want to make a color that's like an indigo color, I think, but make it metallic. So to do that, okay, so to make that first color, to make the indigo color I'm going to use a phthalo blue, any brand, and I'm going to use Mars black. You can use a different black, but that's what I'm going to use. That's going to be the first color that I lay down. So I'm going to mix a little bit up here. And you can use your brayer or mix it first with a palette knife, but then I'm also going to add in, I know I'm a little bit off of camera here, but you can kind of see when you mix those, it gives you kind of that peacock kind of indigo color. And then I'm going to mix in a little bit of the iridescent medium too, just so that you can see what that's going to look like. Now, my tendency is to use too much paint, and I know it's just, if I did something a lot, I would get better at it. But I tend to do a lot of different things, and so almost every time I'm doing something, it's like a first time, which is kind of fun because then you feel like you're experimenting. Okay, so I have my indigo kind of color, and I'm just gonna, I can mix this right here, and I'm just gonna cover my plate and just make sure I have a nice layer. And here I am using my smaller one. I could be using my larger brayer, but I just want a nice even coat of that, and that's not too bad. And then I can use my book page and clean that off, and then I want to drop my stencil in. So what that's going to do is this paint is going to be under my stencil. And so, but I want to go now and remove all the other paint. So this is a pretty contrast, still in the same family. So if I put this is a piece of rice paper. I'm going to pull up that paint that's in between, and see I've left a pattern on the other one. So if you have a piece, if you think the design you're going to pull up is going to be really nice, I don't like to waste it. That's what I did here. To me, that's kind of a waste because it was done onto white. So I can keep layering on this, But if you really like that design, your stencil, grab a piece of paper that you've already put paint on. Like I said, I try to keep a variety. You know, this is just pulling up a plain color. And I have those handy so that if I want to take the stencil paint out, I have created a nice little print here. Okay, so you're just going to get that off and see how nice that looks just on the one that I had it on. So I'm going to set that aside to dry. And I could clean this off more if you see you have extra that you don't want. Again, I don't mind grunginess, so I kind of like to see the left behind paint come with my last pull. So if I wanted to or cared to, I could clean this off. This is where the tissue paper, deli weight paper works really well because it's thinner. And sometimes it'll go ahead and take up more. This is a little dry already, but it would maybe take up more of that paint. It also works better, the thinner paper, if you have a really fine, detailed, intricate pattern, you know, some little smaller openings you're trying to get through, that's easier to do with thinner paper. So because this is so large and so open, you know, I didn't have to worry about that. Now, one thing I could do for fun, because this is such an open pattern, I could drop another stencil with a smaller pattern on it, and then we could do 4 colors and we'd get a kind of a different thing going on that. So maybe I'll do that. Let's grab something small. Now I could do something, you know, like a grid, or I always love polka dots. I'm going to try this. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it might be interesting. So I'm going to lay this down first, and I want to get some paint in there, or I could do the opposite where I lift it. Probably going to be easier if I try to lift it. So I'm going to put a color down on this and then drop this stencil, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, color. What color do I want to do this with? I'm kind of feeling like a limey green color. So I'm going to try this light olive green, and I would like it better if this was clean, or at least dry. I don't like to put paint directly onto my plate because I'll end up with a big blob that I have a hard time moving around. It won't be as bad on this because it's so open, but I'm gonna still, it's better if I transfer it, I think. And then I don't put too much paint, or use my larger brayer would be smart. So I want to get paint in that opening, just a thin layer. And then I'm going to drop the second stencil, and I'm going to see if I can use something really thin. And get that paint out of the little details. So I'm kind of experimenting here with doing it, these 2 stencils together, and the order that I'm doing it, but we're going to see what happens. The other thing, if you need to remove more paint, you know, you're not getting in there, you can use a baby wipe and clean it. But again, I don't want perfection. I like the grungy hole kind of thing. Okay, so then I think it's just going to leave me another subtle design inside those cells. That's probably not going to look anything like this, but that's polka dots probably would have been the smarter way to go. Okay, so now I need another color to contrast with this. And what would that be? If I go totally crazy, it'll change this color, but I don't know that I care because it'll make that show up the most. It's going to change this color. I know this is crazy, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is probably insane of a color, but I love it. And now it's quite a bit of paint. Now you want to make sure that's dry. I didn't really even check it. I'm probably going to have a mess, but we'll see. Okay, and then I'm going to take that up. So I know it's hard to see with this lighting, but I have a dark line of my indigo, and I have where my stencil was sitting. This was left on quite a while, so it pulled a lot of it up, but it leaves some of that indigo down where the stencil was. So it's really subtle, that first layer, but it's going to give me, you see the edges, and it's going to give me that little bit of grungy, old worldy kind of look. And then I don't know how much of that pattern. Oh, you do see it a little bit. Okay. It might not be the prettiest pattern. I'm going to just lay this here to kind of clean this off. So maybe if I had a better choice of my stencil, I have a feeling it was going to be not a good choice of stencil, but there is going to be a pattern in there. So I want this to dry before I do my final layer. So in the meantime, if I want, I can do something with this. Maybe drop one of these down. So I'm going to help this to dry with my heat gun. There will be people say don't use this. Depending on how strong your heat gun is, this one's actually probably pretty strong, is you want to just keep it up high moving, and you can dry this. I've never had a problem with it. So just be very careful. Okay, now this is dry, and I'm going to do my final pull. So we have, you know, our first indigo layer, then we dropped our stencil, then I dropped that second and cleaned that off. Then I dropped that second stencil, which is just going to make these openings have some pattern in them. I probably did not choose the best one to do that with, but we're just playing. Okay, and then the magenta then is the background to, you know, the openings in this stencil. And now we're going to do the final pull, which you're going to see then in the actual where the stencil was laying and behind the magenta. It's going to be another layer. So you just want to think about what color that is. It's easy to say, I'll do white, then you're not messing with what color it's going to turn. But this is where I also like to use my metallics. So I think I'm going to go gold. Now, normally I use Liquitex basic acrylics that I get at Michael's, but I was out of gold, so I bought this Royal and Langnickel at Walmart. And so we're going to try this. And this I don't mind putting directly on. And again, I'm probably using too much. But for my final pull, I want to make sure I have enough paint to really wet everything so that it will all, this is dry so I can use it, so that it will soften my layers underneath and pull it. So I want to make sure I have really good coverage, and that wasn't quite enough. So I just want it, I want it thin and even, but I'm pulling it, you know, onto fabric. And so I did have people that saw the post that I did on Instagram that said, you know, how did you get your line so crisp and that kind of thing. And that may just be how long you leave it on the plate to dry and how much paint you had. So I'm just rolling that out. Doesn't look like I have as much up there, but that's okay. And then I'm just going to take my fabric and drop it right onto my plate. I cut these just a tiny bit larger than 9 by 12 so that I'd have something to grab. And you can feel if I was using paper, you could feel it getting cold. In this case, you kind of feel the fabric feeling damp. And so that's kind of how you'll tell when it's ready, when it feels dry again. So, you know, you can use your hand. You can put another piece of paper down, you know, and to protect in case something goes through. And then, you know, use your brayer to do that. I also have, what I like to use is my Speedball Baron. And this just gets a nice adhesion all over on the edges. And then same thing, if I wanted to use my heat gun, I could do that. Or you just walk away and go do something else, because you want to let this sit until it's dry. And it's going to take a different amount of time for you, depending on how much paint you had down, what humidity level you have in wherever you're working. So I can still feel that this is still damp. You can take a little peek and I can see that, well, you can't see, but I can see that it's not ready. So I need to let this dry or help this dry. Okay, that feels pretty good. I have a feeling the edges are not going to all come up, which they never do, almost never. And that's because I didn't have enough paint down on my final layer to pull it. But you're going to see this will all be for my next one, and I like that. And then it gives you these kind of distressed looking edges. So the interesting thing is the colors are maybe not as bright as you saw them go down on the mixing plate here, because you're adding layers on top, so it's kind of like you're mixing the paint. You're just not mixing it beforehand. You're mixing it in the layers, sort of like if you were to layer watercolor, let it dry, and add another color, you're going to end up mixing those. So you get those interesting things. And then when you don't have a certain amount of paint, and you can see where my line, where I'm rolling it, if I don't get it really even, you get that different mottled look. So each layer might roll on differently depending on how much paint. So you get that variation. You get this interesting color where the gold and the olive green, the light olive green mix together to create that sort of antique bronze kind of look. But I really like that. I mean, even though my pattern behind is super subtle, it kind of gives you that vintage wallpaper look, and like I'm looking through maybe an iron gate through to wallpaper, you know, that kind of thing. So I really I like that. I like the dark on the edges to, you know, use bits of that. But I like that grunginess of it. But with the vivid colors, it just kind of gives you a rich thing. And you can kind of see how I have that iridescence was even left behind in some of it. So that and the gold, you know, my final layer was gold. So it left that shimmer in between as well. So I really, you know, that's just kind of a fun experiment. So you never know unless you're really practiced at it. You never know how your colors are going to turn out. And when I mixed my indigo, it looked more blue, but by the time I added the other colors back in, it has gone more black again. So, you know, lesson, if I want it to still look blue, I can kind of see the blue in here, but where it was layered on with the magenta and the light olive green, it's more black. So, you know, you would then want to make this more blue, knowing that it's going to darken up when you've added the other colors. So that's just kind of how I did all of the other ones. Again, I did an extra layer in this one by adding that stencil in between. But so I kind of do it my 3-color method, where I put a color down, put the stencil down, and then add a color and then take it away. So that kind of thing. So that is one thing I'm doing. And then one thing I want to also try is that I haven't done is, and you probably have if you've been doing this because I'm just newer at it. So I have some Posca pens. I like that I have this big one and a chiseled tip one, so that I can do some mark making, because I want to use all these fabrics I'm doing. I wanted to kind of tear them up and use bits of them like fabric collaging to make some fabric journal covers. That's my thought. So I'm going to some of these are new, and so I haven't really even used them too much because they're so big. But like this one has this nice big chisel thing. So I thought I would just try doing some mark making in different sizes. And I'm kind of seeing how it's not going down solid on the plate. You know, it's opening up, which that's kind of interesting. I kind of like that. So I'm just going to try to do some random size, different mark making things, using some of these pens. This is a smaller chiseled tip. So we'll see what I can pull up. Let's see. Okay, so some marks, and I'll let that dry. And I think I'm pulling it up onto white fabric, so I could do, you know, even matte medium or something. I'm going to go ahead and do this is Amsterdam titanium white. And I'm going to use this because part of what I want to do on these is I found that you can doodle on this too with your paint pens and gel pens and all of that if you have this base of paint to be doodling onto, better than the fabric. Now, I did try using fabric markers. You can do that too, and then it doesn't matter. But I found it super easy, and I'll show you at the end of this video, or maybe even in another video, but I'll show you how I was able to do some things on this fabric after I had printed it. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this right onto this plate and get enough, hopefully, just to pull this. So nothing crazy fancy, just black and white. Instead of, I like making, now see, I'm pulling up a lot of that, so I'm going to get this kind of speckly thing. Something must not have been dry, but I don't mind. That's going to maybe be kind of interesting. So we'll see. And lay this down. And see what happened. So I might not have been completely dry. Now that's kind of interesting. It's going to have left some behind. I can see it on there. So when I put the paint over the Posca pen, it pulled it up and it made all of this behind here, which I don't mind at all. That's really cute and grungy. I do kind of like how it left those openings. So that's kind of fun for just cutting out little bits, you know, and adding it to a fabric collage. Okay, so the next one I want to do, just again so that I have one, and maybe I'm going to do Mars Black. Again, just for some, I think I'm going to do a black and white and a white and black. So I'm doing this and I'm getting it lighter and lighter a touch to try not to have little lines. And then I'm going to put this down. Now I want to put it the reverse if you want it. You can't really read it anyway, but it did say something. But I think I'm going to intentionally put it backwards. So if it has some writing you want to see what it says, then put it down backwards. And actually, I think then when I do this, I'm going to print this onto the red, use the red one to take it up. And that way it will maybe make sense. Okay, so you can see I put it, I can read it. I only know it said something because I made it. And it starts out with and you can see the and. So if you don't want to read that, have it so that you can read it and it'll be backwards when you print it. So vice versa. But see, I like that because then it doesn't look like anything. So that gave me the red writing with the black by putting the black down and pulling it up. So then I'm going to I can pull this up. I could do another color if I want, you know, that would be in between and then pull this up, but I want it just black and white. So I'm going to pull this up now. And then I'm going to let this dry and then pull it up with white. So obviously, if I would have had this one and this one, if these were fabrics I was working with instead of paper, I would have more fabric fodder, but I didn't. So I don't have those prepared. So it might be a good idea to prepare ahead some solid color fabric that you can use to do your ghost prints. And it'll be gray if I use this, so let's just... It's going to be a little gray because I used a dirty brayer. There you go. A nice grungy. I even like how the unevenness, you know, it mixed that because of my brayer, it's grays, but you can see where some are whiter than others from just not getting mixed good well on the plate. But that's just kind of another fun little thing to have little scraps of. So I'm just kind of trying to create some fabric fodder here. Okay, so I have one more piece that I can do. So I'm thinking to do a little collage of things, of different ones maybe. That's what I have here in small things. I could do this down here, kind of a black and white. These would be cute as black and white little bits. And then do some color up here maybe. I always like this one. I always like circles for some reason, different kinds of circles. So maybe that. That's another one even smaller. Okay, so I want to think about what I want to do here. And I want to put down black, I think. Or let's put down white. Yeah, I think I'll put down white and then do black. And what about here? These could even be black and white too. So let's do, for some reason I'm in kind of, and maybe I'll use a clean brayer. So I'll put black down first. Is that what I wanted to do or the reverse? Too late. The other thing good about using tissue paper is when you rub it, you can see if you're getting the paint to come in or not, getting it pulled up. So see, if I just keep layering on this one, this will end up being a good one for collage. So I could do this white, do this a color. No, do this a color on these and then pull it all up with white. I think I'll do that. So I can pull these up and let them dry. Add a color to here. Maybe just my gold since I have it sitting here. I'm not being very creative on the colors today, but if you saw my table, I don't really have a lot of room for a huge mess. So that's going to be very subtle. Okay, and then let's see. I'll pull that up with the white. Probably too much paint, but that's okay. And I think I'm going to, just to be safe, oh, I don't know, neither one of these are really dry. Ooh, that's what we're going to have. I like that. I like how it's going to give me that, a kind of a creamy but gold. Thing. So I like that. So what it does when you print it on fabric like this, I have paint or something everywhere, so it's like priming the fabric, but it's still fabric. So the nice thing is you can collage with it in a fabric sort of way, but we'll still be able to do our pen work on it, but also you can sew on it. I mean, you can sew on paper too. But that way, if you wanted to make something that needed to be fabric, like a pouch for your pencils or, you know, a little needle book or something like that, it's fabric, but it's made with gel prints. And then we can still use it. I like to actually make my journal covers with fabric. So I'll be able to do kind of a mixed media fabric and paper collage kind of deal. So that is it. If you would like to see me do more gel print experiments, I know I didn't work with a lot of the different colors and things that I showed you in all of these previous ones, but you can see by the layering of colors, they were done exactly the same as this. So that just kind of shows you my favorite way to use stencils and gel print. and then doing it on fabric, now I have a variety of different things that I can do. So I've started a little project with it just to see what would work and what wouldn't work, but I wanted to share that with you today. And then next video, I'm gonna maybe expand on this a little bit, or I have a whole different way of printing on fabric that we can also use, doing some of the techniques that we've done in the first 14 videos. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments or say hello if you're new to my channel. And I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.